Hi, this is Rich Coles from Prodactive Project Solutions. The purpose of this video is to show you how you can add a counter to your time plans to see how many times the end date of a task has changed. So let's have a look and see what I mean by this. So in this time plan, I've got these columns which I've highlighted in pink to make them clear, and I've got this end date change counter. And what happens here is if a task changes, so if I look at and develop a comms plan and I decide that, or rather the date changes, and so someone goes into the plan and changes and pushes that date out to the 14th, for example. So whilst I can see that on the baseline and it's recorded across there, actually I want to understand how many times that date has been changed. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to save this and I'm going to refresh. And what's going to happen is that was saying 7, and you can see that has now gone up to 8. So this becomes a useful way that you can see how many times individual tasks are changing, and therefore you can start understanding, is there a trend? Why are dates changing so much on the time plan? So how do I do this? And how does it all work? So let me just change and save that. Okay, so the other piece here before I dive in is I've also got the earliest plan date, and this shows you what the original date was. Again, this can be the same as the baseline, or if you reset your baseline over time, then this can actually be the original date here. So this is done by creating a separate sheet here. So I've got the Bubbly time plan, and what I did at the start of this project is I created a separate sheet in terms of for the date change archive. So this is a replica of the time plan. And again, what you can do is you can add in a column in terms of the date added. So these are the dates of when the changes were made. And in terms of what happens is in the master sheet, what I have is I've created an automation. So this automation, what it does is, let me just dive into this. It says copy a date change to the archive. And so what it's saying is when the end date changes to any value, and when from the baseline, the variance is a negative value, i.e. it's impacting the baseline, and so it's making it later. And in this case, where the level is 0, because what I don't want it to do is take across parent rows, just the children rows, because the parent rows can't be changed. They are a result of what happens below. So I'm just after the items where the level is 0, is blank, then I get it to copy to the sheet. So let me just go back in, and if I just cancel and close this. So what is happening here, and if I just unhide the columns which I've got here, so unhide all columns, you'll see I've got a variety of columns, but I've got the level. And so anything that's a parent has got a number on it. Anything that hasn't, and bear in mind, I can't change the dates. If you look, I'm just trying to change. I can't change the dates in a parent column because it's a result of the children. So that's why I'm excluding these levels. You don't want those to go through because they're always going to change if the date changes. Well, they'll quite often change. So I just want these parents to come through. Now the other bit is you'll notice I've got row ID in the plan, and that's important as well. So let me just hide those columns again and go back in. So what have I done in terms of the date change archive? I've added this column here, and within this piece, this is where the information goes, and within the actual time plan, I've got the formula here. And what am I asking it to do? So if I go into the formula and I turn it to a cell formula so you can see, if I double click in, what I'm asking it to do is I'm saying if because at the beginning of this plan, I took a baseline and put every item in there just so I had the earliest plan date. So what I'm asking it to do is I'm saying find items where the count is greater than 1 in this sheet. And where it's greater than 1, it's going to look into this sheet and it's going to go to the end date change and say how many times is this item coming up. So if I just go to this one and I'm just going to unhide all columns, and let's just take an item down at the bottom, so develop comms plan, you can see that row ID is column 18. So let me just go to filter, I'm going to go to new filter, and I'm going to go row ID is value 18, apply, he says, and that hasn't quite worked, so let me just go back to that filter, edit it, it contains, is one of select values. Here we go to 18, apply. Right, so what you can see is this has come across, the row ID has come in this number of times here, and you can see it's 9 times it's come into here. So what's happening each time I make a change in the master sheet is it's copying it across to the other sheet here. So the row ID is there, and what the formula is doing, if I just go back to the other sheet, is what the formula is doing is it's looking at the ID and it's counting the number of times that that row ID is appearing in the sheet here. Now, again, because I've got everything in the sheet from the beginning, I take off 1, and therefore it gives me the number of how many changes has happened. So that's how this number comes in. And again, if at the beginning, because they're in there, if it's in there once, you take off 1, and therefore it's 0, and that's why in the column, that's why it just, if it's equal to 1, it is blank. So going back to this piece, and then what you can do is you can add in another formula in here to say, well, what was that earliest date that was originally there? And that's why at the beginning I get it to show the original dates. I put in the baseline plan into the archive here. So if I go to convert to cell formula in here, I go into this one, and ultimately what I'm getting it to do is I'm using a min collect formula here. And so using the min collect, I'm saying, please look at the other sheet, and in the other sheet, let's just go to the other sheet, in the other sheet, see this item and then find me the earliest date of all these ones. So if you scroll through here, you can see what's the earliest date. So it looks to me like the earliest date was the 28th of February, in fact the 21st of February, so that was the earliest date. And so what the other plan is doing is it's pulling back and it's saying, what's the earliest date you can find in there? Well, in this case, it is that's the wrong one because we were looking at a slightly different time plan. In there, that's a comms plan. So if I go back to the comms plan, which is row 18, and go back to the comms plan, develop a comms plan, that's the 21st here. So you can see the 21st is showing up in the time plan. Going back in again, that was the earliest date there. So it is doing a minimum formula on that side. So again, that's a way. And then what you can do if you want to also, whilst this also, again, you've got the baseline on the other side here. But again, I've just got a simple formula in here, which is saying, well, what's the difference between this date and that date? 21 days. So again, you don't necessarily need these columns here, but it depends on what your purpose is. And if you want to see why things are changing, this is one way that you can get a record of it. And again, this isn't just for a project time plan. This can be used on any form of record where data is changing on a basis and you don't know why is it changing on that side. So I hope that's been useful. Just again, as a reminder, just so you can see the formulas here, let me just zoom in because I can't include it in the description. So here's the formula on this one. So end date. So that's to say, basically at the beginning, just bring a blank value, but otherwise then bring the value -1. So you're taking 1 off on it because there's always a figure there. So that's the first formula. Second formula is a bit more complicated. It's a bit longer here, but ultimately this is the important bit you want to focus on. It is the min collect formula. So if you put in min and collect, and then it gives you the guidance of what you need to write in terms of this, and it's looking at the other sheet. Okay. And then the final one on the variance, again, is a fairly simple formula. And if I go to just edit column formula so you can see that, and that is, so if it's blank, don't do anything, but otherwise then calculate it and say, what was this date in here, take away that date there. So that's an overview. How can you add a counter to this? Again, this is something which I've been asked by clients, and so I thought I'd do a video on it. So trust that's been useful for others. I thought I'd share that in case anyone else is after this as well. So thanks for watching, and bye for now.